Thank you, Bhante. Thank you, Bhante, for sharing your experience with me. My question is, when I move from samadhi with the sign, the subtle breath, within brackets, the subtle breath, to samadhi without the sign, watching, experiencing luminous, non-conceptual, non-personalized bliss, is the experience one of being saturated in the bhavanga in Pali, or attaya vijnana in Sanskrit? That is the first question. May I keep the second one or read it?
Yeah, this is, we will go and later we'll go to the second part.
Thank you.
So, while giving the discussion, the discourse, I mentioned that each and every vijnana, or each and every consciousness having its own due course or due condition, and therefore when we are explaining about the materiality, something like the breath, when it becomes gross, we can understand the breath is the cause, vijnana established upon the breath. And when the breath becomes medium, again we can understand the vijnana, the consciousness is taking the body consciousness. When it becomes subtle, still it is a body consciousness. But whenever the yogi, whenever the practitioner is going to say, there is no more body, no more materiality, but still the mindfulness is there. So that consciousness based upon what? Is it a body consciousness, or it is something other consciousness, or it is, should we have another different name for that? So that is the part the Buddha mentioned in this particular sutta. If you have doubt, if you are not certain enough, then you fabricate stories. The person like me find a fault with coming out with this suggestion like Ale Vijnana or Bhavanga. So we must not rush into such introducing new names and new topic. We have still continue. We have to still observe it. That is to say, repetitive observation. That is to say, anupassana. Then you may understand, instead of vijnana taking another shape, vijnana has different layers, the outermost gross layer and in the inner. And when you go deeper and deeper, the body consciousness itself is go deep. When you go there, that area we have never perceived before. That was none of our business. So therefore our rational mind, which is always try to give a name, get little amused, do not know what to do. So therefore if you are a theoretician, you will rush to give a name. But evenly suspended attention and suspended decision is necessary here. You just keep on experiencing it rather than labeling with the not much of experience. So therefore once you come to the gross breath becomes subtle and subtle becomes subtlest, still try to be with it, because that area is unknown area. That's a new area. So one thing you may develop fear. Something you can develop uncertainty, or otherwise you may try to put a name, and both of them you must not do. Instead increase the acquaintance or familiarity, seasoning it, and so you have to have the kind of a bewilderment, the boldness, kind of a novelty, kind of a adventurous feeling to start with or to face it. And when you go there, you can see the the different grades of vijnana, different layers of vijnana, and going deep, deep, deep into the center. When it's coming to the center, the Buddha is using completely different terminology. It says that the vijnana is not much manifested or unfounded with the base, and that is the only place you can keep the vijnana under somewhat control, under somewhat surveillance. So when you go there, don't rush to a decision, don't try to do something, just more and more observation and familiarizing it. Then you can understand more and more the consciousness is under the light of mindfulness, even though there is no object as such or no nimitta. It's a kind of a equilibrium, it's a kind of a balance. You can be there even though it is uncertain. Two things, just like yesterday I tried to point it out. You may understand by more and more familiarization. It is not an accident, it is a gradual process. You know the history or events, how did you come up to that level, and when and more you go deeper, the stream of consciousness becomes pure and pure, more and more pure. So, and it is no more yours. You are just a neutral observer. So don't rush to put a label. Don't rush to say it is a different kind of vijnana. It's an evolution of vijnana, but more towards the purity, more towards the somewhat under control. So much so, vijnana is no more a magician, and it's losing the power, but under the surveillance, under the spotlight. So this is the way you are mastering the materiality. So you may do the same thing with respect to the vijnana based upon the feelings, perception, volitional activities. So this is the kind of a precursor. The same model you may see from the different viewpoints, different facets with respect to the pain, feelings, the feeling, perception and volitional activities. So therefore, this part, understanding the different layers of vijnana, is a very, very adventurous thing, very dynamic. And therefore, don't rush to a decision. One person put the term, that is what I am repeating, evenly suspended attention and suspended decision. If you're going to label it, or if you're going to put this thing, you are fixing it, you are crucifying it, you are getting committed. Don't get committed, familiarize it.
The second part of the question, Bhante, is there an experiential difference between the bhavanga, the space of the luminous, non-conceptual mind, and the substrate? Sorry? Substrate. Okay. Substrate consciousness of knowing that you are saturated in the bhavanga? Saturated in the bhavanga.
So I am not going to buy your idea of bhavanga. I am trying to explain, without making use this bhavanga, that is a kind of a nomenclature. And by putting a name, you are getting committed. And what I am trying to say is, even without introducing this, you can say, when and where you go deep and deep into through materiality to the consciousness, different layers are there, and being it is a gradation, it's a changing. Which one you are going to label it as bhavanga, which one is you are going to label it as the luminous substrata, still you are unqualified, because still you have to follow, you have to master it. And when and where you label it, you crucify it, you fix it. And that is the way our rational mind is always. Our rational mind always with the perception. We are in the nomenclature. And moment you put it there, you get committed. And still in the safe hand, that is making use the middle path, without giving a label, still you have to experience it, familiarize it, and it is an adventurous area. That same thing will reconfirm with respect to the feeling, and the day you are going to reconfirm with respect to the perception, it's a completely different idea, because perception is always gloss over our fresh understanding by putting a label, putting a name. So there's no rush to put into label, and putting a label is your volitional involvement. Then you get committed. Still you can do, let it happening, let it evolve, let it go through the metamorphosis, and don't rush. That means you are not getting committed in terms of volitional activity. You are not going to put a label by nomenclature. You are not going to, even though it is not a feeling from the normal sense, but still you are radically let it happen.
Bhante, I want to draw your attention to two practices that I've been doing over the last 6 months. The first one is... Bhante, I want to draw your attention. Tell me if I am speaking too fast.
Without the mic, I can easily understand. Without the mic, I can clearly hear you. Yeah.
The two practices are, the first practice is samadhi without a sign. In other words, simply watching thoughts and images and that sort of stuff. And oftentimes I will use the breath to get some decent concentration first, before I can then go into that samadhi without a sign. And it is often spontaneous. It's not driven by my willpower. That is number one practice. Now, that practice has the equivalent in Tibetan Buddhism with Milarepa, called settling the mind in its natural state. Now, in the Theravada tradition, I'm sure you have an absolutely equivalent name, which I do not know. There is a second practice, which is awareness and mindfulness of knowing that you are watching your mind. So it is called, in the Tibetan practice, it's called awareness of awareness. This is the distinction that I wanted to draw, and that's what my question was about. Am I watching in the system that you're outlining in this retreat? Am I watching the vibhanga or the space of the mind? Or am I watching the consciousness that fills that space in the mind when I've flipped over from samadhi with a sign, which is breath, into that simple watching with no personalized experience?
From the Theravada terminology, if you go to the arupa jhana, akasanan chayatana, viññānaṁ chayatana, akinchanyayatana, nevasanya nasanyayatana. That means non-materialistic sphere cut into four. That is the terminology we use in Samatha Bhavana. Before coming to that, you know the Rupa Jhana, first, second, third, fourth. First, second, third, fourth means make your object of meditation become subtle and subtle and subtle. At the fourth jhana, it is almost unperceivable. Even if you take the breath, first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, you see the third jhana is the one Ajahn Brahm is mentioning as the beautiful breathing. And ultimately the fourth jhana, no breath as such, but you are in a bliss. So that is we call, as far as materiality is concerned, the space between the matter or dark matter, or we can space. That is what we call akasa. So those who are believing on the materiality appear like a bankruptcy, because this is negative side of matter. This is antimatter, but it is still another equilibrium. Balanced state. So you can go into and can dwell as far as the samatha is concerned, but I am using the same terminology to explain the vipassana mind. Still, if it is, even though it is momentary, you can be there. And there, at a time you are in the space, at a time you are in the matter. So matter and antimatter, you are training. And you know, this is the function of the consciousness. consciousness make matter and antimatter too and make a conflict, just like American politics. Two different and fighting each other. Then the consciousness gain the main advantage. Then therefore you have to understand, whenever you master the matter, even though you go to the space, even you go to the no matter situation, your mind either like matter or no matter, so much so, there is a tension, there is a frustration. So that is the function of the consciousness. So you have to let the consciousness know whether matter or no matter, no matter. And doesn't matter. Then consciousness withdraw. Consciousness is the malice power. Withdraw, that is called Vijnana Chayatana. You have to understand Vijnana is always split and rule.
And so do you use Aditana as in the Upakalesa Sutra that the Buddha talked about before, and you kick off on the meditation to set that decision in place so you don't have to think of it. If you start thinking of those spaces of meditation, you blow yourself out of water.
No, that this is to say, at a time you hear sounds, at a time no sounds. At a time you feel subtle breath, at a time it is not there. At a time you feel the feeling, at a time it is not there. At a time you think, at a time you are not thinking. Whatever it may be, you are ready to accept both as relative to each other. They are not discrete. They have only the relative value, so much so, you are not worried whether your pure space is distracted, because you know that distraction is temporary. Again, it comes back to the pure situation or space situation. Even the space situation happens, you know it can be distracted anytime by kind of a thing. So imagine you can have an idea whether you have matter, label, or object, or nimitta, or not, never mind. That is the point you can understand the dirty game of the Vijnana, so that you are not carried away whether you see object, subtle object or not. Then you go to a point where no friction. Go to a point there is no tension. Because there are objects are there and you are not worrying. So that means you are, even though matter and antimatter game is there, you consider both of them as equal, that is evenly suspended attention. And then that is artificial thing. That is due to your utter full concentration and the mindfulness, you can be there. So to make it natural, you have to compromise whether perception is there or not, no problem. You keep it, and I interpret this as neva sanya na sanya, whether perception is there or not. And that is the what before the Buddha, the Indian situation, all the old sages, they came up to that level, but there was a subtle attraction or subtle inclination to consider this experience as me, mine, and myself. So now the Buddha, emerging out of that, he says, even that experience, even after you master your own consciousness or the dirty game of the consciousness, even you know the art of main thing is not to worry, don't claim this as my or me or my self. You just consider this as a play of the cause and effect relationship. You take the neutral observer's position and look at it, because you are fully mindful. Observe it, you are not judgmental. You consider this flux. You consider this flux as the truth of suffering. It's ever moving, no more you can reduce. This is the utmost level you can reduce, and keep it at that level. Don't exaggerate, don't manifest it. And so much so, as far as you are observant, as far as you are vigilant, it may be at the bare minimum level, and that also will be gone once you died. Till your death, you are observing, this is a kind of a repercussion, kind of a precipitation, but no more you can go. So there you have to be practical. You have reduced up to the bare minimum and cope up with it. Don't go for the theoretical maximum, 100% purity. It is not possible on this earth. But that can happen at the end of your death. So therefore here, you are not going to make a formulas. You are not going to make a golden formulas to say, I am going to cut off all the defilements. You are reducing to a manageable level and keep it under surveillance. So therefore, still you need kind of a restrainment, but that does not indicate you are waning off or you are reducing further. No expectation, no appointment, so there won't be any disappointment. But you are face to face with the bare minimum skeleton representation of the suffering is there. You consider this as truth of suffering. I don't know whether you got the point.
No, thank you, Mother. That's really helpful.
Dear Bhante, when we are observing in-breath and out-breaths, can't we slice it into 8 parts? And see, please correct me if I'm wrong. So this person is drawing a small diagram that is breaking the in-breath into start, existence, and end. Then the gap, then the out-breath, start, same thing, existence, and the end. So next one, labeling those strings. Number 1 is start of in-breath. Number 2, existence of in-breath. Number 3, end of in-breath. Number 4, gap, transit period. Number 5, start of out-breath. Number 6, existence of out-breath, end of out-breath. Then gap, transit. And question is, isn't it difficult to observe the whole process, all the steps, unless it is a long breath? Thank you, with metta.
So this is good as far as the breath is cross. If you are looking from that viewpoint, what happens is breath becomes subtle. More and more that the bell-shaped curve become more and more flat off. The tail end become very prominent. Ultimately the rising and falling appear insignificant like. So you feel the breath so much so you can't feel the difference in breath and out breath. There's a bottom layer like the horizon, gap in between. But the play is there. The play become insignificant. Only if at all you are looking from this point of view. So if you go up to that level, you can see very subtle notion or very subtle perception to say you are not dead. Breathing is taking place, but it's not gross enough to make whether in-breath or out-breath. So much so, you can't make the beginning, the middle and the end discrete. Theoretically, yes, but practically not. So therefore, you see it has calmed down or settled the dust. Or we can say if you keep a glass of water with muddy water, mud, clay, and ultimately settle down, it will be like a pure water. But there's a little layer underneath, so that is a good outlook. That's a good kind of a view you must have. Whenever the breath is gross, this model applicable. Once it is calmed down, no more you can make the beginning, the middle and the end. That does not indicate your mindfulness, sharpness of the mindfulness gone. That's an increasing of the sharpness of the mindfulness. You see the whole game without episodes. You see the drama, you can't cut it into episode. That does not indicate a weakness in you. But you see the totality, that is called you are losing individual characteristic, but you are gaining common characteristics. That change is a evolution. But both the models are there in your mind. But often what you do is, you are much worried about the individual characteristics. That's a sectarianism. That's fighting. But if you observe one thing for longer time enough, then you see all the individual characteristics disappear and gives rise to the common characteristics, whether you start with the rising and falling, whether you start with the left leg and right leg, whether you start with any other kind of thing, or rising and in-breath and out-breath, no difference. When the common characters comes into being, all the things are equal. Only you can name, note, label whenever the common individual characteristics are there. So therefore, practice this model again and again. One day, you will see you are not dead, you are not sleeping, you are not unconscious. Breath is there, but you can't make it out head or tail. You can't make it out in breath or out breath. So don't reject it. It's a valid way, because you know the way you come up to that level. So there you can't present this model once it come up to the common characteristics.
It's very difficult to read this one. I find that during my meditations, emotions from probably, this is written in a very light pen. It's not the handwriting, but difficult to read.
Can that particular person present? Yes, there.
This is in a light red pen.
No, you have to pass the paper also.
That's okay, I don't need the paper, I can remember the question. Basically, during my meditations, what happens is emotions from past events or traumas arise. And what usually I do is, if I take that as the object of my meditation, I can feel it just leaving and I feel a lot more freer. But the thing is, then another emotion from another past event will arise to take its place. So my question is, should I continue to observe that as it arises and let it go, or should I just let it be and just continue focusing on the breath, and maybe those emotions will take care of themselves?
For that you have to be, how to call that, time specific, space specific. Whenever you feel very comfortable, whenever you feel relaxed, you take a sitting posture. So whereby you can just at the beginning can introduce the primary objects, namely in-breath and out-breath. So that means you are launching your boat when the sea is calm. Don't launch when the sea waves are very rugged. I mean, that is the simple art in the fisherman. Soon you go into the waves, you have to keep on roaring. You have to keep the boat perpendicular to the waves. Because when you are pushing to the waves, 10, 15 people push into the traditional village. Once you put into the ship, sea, only 2 people maximum take control of the boat. And when you go there, right from the beginning, roaring start. When you go little and little further and further into the sea, the wave amplitude reduces. Waves are there, they are not breaking. So you have to go into. So therefore at the beginning you have to introduce meditation, sitting meditation or primary object, when and where the body and other conducive conditions are promotive. So don't try to go into meditation with your uncomfortability of your body and uncomfortability in your mental moods. So therefore you have to find strategic time and space, and when you go there, then you can see maybe 1 or 2 breaths you can see, and the emotions are coming. Whenever it is happening, when the emotions are happening, you have to understand, is there any pattern of them related to the past or future projections, related to some desire or due to hatred or due to your lethargic nature. That kind of more and more emotional, if you let it go, let it come, you can understand your personality traits or your character by the emerging emotions. But with respect to that, you have the pivotal point, the benchmark, the in-breath and out-breath. And more you let the emotions to come without the prejudgmental or reactional way, you can read yourself, even though the pure object of in-breath and out-breath is there, your mind is very happy to be engaged with the emotions. And if you are dealing with emotions with the hatred, that's a fertilizer for it. That's a food for it. that you have to keep the mind. Your basic intention is to keep the attention for the in-breath and out-breath, but the emotions are happening like a gate crasher. How much you can look at them with the equipoise mind, not without a prejudgmental or non-reactional way, so much so you can understand who am I, what is happening behind the screen. So that takes longer time, but no person can do it for you. You have to do it. Keep that breath as a pivotal point or benchmark and let the emotions to happen. Read them just like a specialist or just like a counselor is giving a free counseling to you. You are the patient. You are the counselor here, and you let your talk, the other person listening like a deaf person. This is exactly mentioned by Sigmund Freud in 1918 or 17. He says when the psychopathic person or patient come, the counselor must listen just like a deaf, so that not giving immediate response. Let that person to speak out, catharsis, giving the full confidence. I am not going to divulge it. You just let it happen. So that you are the counselor, you are the patient, mindfulness is the connection, and when it is happening, that is I am not a psychiatric person, this is catharsis, letting out. But all the time you keep the mindfulness on the in-breath and out-breath as a pivotal point, as a benchmark, as a reference point. When and where there are no much of emotion, you familiarize it. When and where emotions become very prominent, you observe them, but without hate. Simply happening is the hatred. So usually it says without a reaction, in an unassuming way. And so much so when it comes, when catharsis happens, that itself is a release. That itself is a release. So more and more you have to let it go out. Otherwise what you do is repression. You hate them. You always try to push the in-breath and out-breath and don't allow it to come back. But here keep the in-breath and out as a pivotal point, but let the emotions to come back, but have a little sensor as to see what kind of a trend, what is the basic idea behind, what is the majority content of the emotion, and that will be a great relief. But up to the point, you have no hatred towards it, because you are not recognizing with emotions. You are not assuming these emotions as me, myself, or mine. You just let it happen. And that is the way now the mindfulness is being used in American Buddhism. That is called business Buddhism. But it is a must. Otherwise, you have to heal first and then only you can use it. So therefore, don't consider this the full scope of mindfulness. This is the therapeutic early part. So you have to be very patient with you. Understand you are a person with emotions, and you are the psychopath, psychiatrist. And there's one good book, Psychotherapy Without the Self, by Mark Epstein. If you can read it, he's a person started with mindfulness and later studied Western psychology. And he says, the book first page indicate so far, the line, the cushion is there, no one is there. And there's a chair for the teacher, no one is there. And the book front page says, a chair and the bed is there, but no one. There's a kind of a dialogue is taking place. You analyze yourself without a self. All the Western psychology is with self. It is reinforcing self. But if you do it through the mindfulness, you learn that psychotherapy without the cells. So you have to be a good patient, and you have to be a good teacher or good healer, and you have to understand the way you are using the mindfulness. It's a new area you can explore into.
Thank you.
Dear Bhante, what is the reason for the body to rock on the heart to pound like a drum during meditation? Thank you for explaining.
So this is the way that we are learning the body. Kaya kayanupassī viharati. We look at the body as is someone else. So when you are observing the things happening within the body, you may appreciate or not. You may feel governable sometimes it is not. So therefore, let the body to behave in the completely natural way. I don't know whether you have seen when the infants go to sleep, they are moving. That is their natural body. The growth is happening, metabolic functions, smiling, crying, crawling, everything happens, but still a very nice sound sleep. Likewise, whenever you give the complete choiceless awareness, body is working in such a way, because we never give the body balance experience in our profession. Always imbalance. When you are working, we work with the right hand. Left hand is paralyzed. When you play football, we would kick with the right leg, maybe the left leg is not given. So these are few examples. So therefore, whenever the mind becomes calm, body is making the compensation. It do its own exercises, and it's a kind of a healing. Only thing is, if you are sitting in a group and if you are a young person, then you feel ashamed. But old people, galala. Who cares? That is why young people are not happy to come and sit in the group. You see, your thoughts, he witnesses your thoughts in bewilderment. So much of panic and so much of emotions happen. But no one can notice. No problem. But when the body is swaying, that is, you feel like you are responsible. Because you claim, body is me, body is mine, body is myself. So in that sense, I thank the Bhikkhu Sati. He is not worried about the body. He is not worrying about the feelings. He is not worried about the perception. He is not worried about his own volition. Only worry is the consciousness. It's a very deep layer. But the yogi, when you start, you have to do all the 5 layers to take care about and understand, sympathize your body. And to understand and sympathize your feelings, your perception, your volitional activities, and at last only you can understand the manipulations of the consciousness. So therefore, there's one shadow, or the noble teacher in Burma, he says, if your body is not awkward, if it is not abnormal, you are not progressing in meditation. So one day when I am explaining to that, one of my Burmese friend, he told, many are worried, but that particular side says, when you are progressing in meditation, your body gives so much of awkward and unbecoming kind of behaviors. So he put up a meditation hall for the ladies and the male and female. When you go there, you can see all the possible breakdowns. So we were traveling there. He says, if you wish, you can climb up and see. That side is promoting it. And I see the Osho, Rajanish, he also promoting, give a music and ask you to dance. And all of a sudden break the music and come out of the position, stay 1 hour like that. This is a kind of a catharsis. So therefore, whenever it is happening, make sure the stream of mindfulness. Make sure the continuity of the mindfulness, then even though if the body is not under control, if the mindfulness is intact, I would consider that mindfulness is more sporty and more versatile than the mindfulness in the calm body. It is ready for the challenge. It is ready for the adventures. And that is how you are going progress. So don't hinder it, don't disturb it. Just be aware and keep your track with the mindfulness. If the mindfulness is intact, don't question it. Just let it happen. That may be a one episode in your progress.
Venerable Sir, can you please outline the difference between Vipassana meditation and Samatha? I use my breath as the object and I enjoy my meditation. However, I would like to experience Vipassana meditation as well. I have followed your instructions, but when the breath gets very fine and light, I am not sure whether I then go into the Samatha meditation.
Maybe. Yeah. So, specific question is, before it becomes subtle, whenever your mind is face to face with the breath, what do you experience? So that explains your early encounters with Buddhism, encounters with the breath, and how do you experience indicate whether it is going to the Samatha or Vipassana. So I would like to listen, I would like to gather the information before it becomes subtle, when and where you are with the breath. I would say, what I mean is the gross breath. What is the experience? And that would say whether it is Samatha or Vipassana. So I need some more information to analyze it.
Last sentence is incomplete. Is there anyone, other person who wrote the question wants to amplify?
If it is if the person wishes to be anonymous, but I am asking to please rewrite it. This is a very, very, very valid question. But to answer it, I must know whenever the breath before becomes subtle, when it is gross, how do you feel it? What is your experience? And simply, can you feel the difference between in-breath and out-breath? And please give me information, and that will be helpful for me to analyze. We are postponing the question.
Venerable Sir, please explain the term Vibhava Tanha. Second question, I don't think, I'll repeat that as well. What is the difference between Nirodha Samapatti and Sunyata state?
So these are, of course, very lucrative, good terms, but when you are going on the practical way, putting these all concepts into the discussion, may the discussion go bewilderment. So that particular person will be happy, of course, but we are going with 60-odd people. So therefore, if it is possible, I will keep that question and incorporate into the future talks, and we'll try to give the theoretical answer. Otherwise, our practical, pragmatic nature of the discussion will be disturbed by taking this theoretical part, specifically in this event, in this juncture.
Dear Bhante, when I do Anapanasati, and when I am in a state of Samadhi, my head tends to fall backwards. Should I discourage this involuntary movement? Thank you.
This is also related to the early question where the body movements are there. So whenever it is happening, what is your relationship with your primary object? Or in other words, how is your mindfulness? When it is happening, still you are mindful or not is the main thing. And still the question can be, if I am mindful, if I know the head is moving forward or backward, should I willfully or intentionally correct the posture, or should I just be with the primary object or mindfulness? If the mindfulness is intact, you are in the safe land, nothing to worry. And if the mindfulness is there, and if you feel pain, if you feel something wrong due to this awkward position of the head, my simple answer is just consult the body knowledge. Ask the body, whatever the position you can be there, I am not concerned. I am worried only for the mindfulness and the primary object. Ask the body, if it is painful, let the body to correct it. If it is not so, if the body can sustain, just continue, because your main criterion, the mindfulness, is intact. And your relationship with the primary object is visible and possible. If it is so, just forget about. But if it is painful and awkward, just consult the body knowledge. And when the body is correcting it, when the body is adjusting it, see whether that correction is distracting your mindfulness. That bodily adjustment going to disturb your mindfulness. And if it is not so, well and good.
Dear Bhante, mindfulness has emerged as a trendy word, and may with little knowledge has started guidance in meditation as a source of earning an income. Do you think such practices could attribute to the decline of Buddhism? Do you think such practices could attribute to the decline of Buddha's real teachings? Thank you for your views.
So I will give my position on that. For the last 2-3 years, we in Nissarana conducted retreats, 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, sometimes 2 weeks, and back to back. So we have gone up to 112 retreats, and majority are above 50. Very little young people came. So at the 60th retreat, we decided we must allocate 50% of the allocation for the people below 40. The 40% of the retreatant must be below 40. And that everyone appreciated it. And now we are giving more and more attention for the younger generation. And later, idea came, how can we introduce this mindfulness into the school curriculum at national level. And there we did some pioneer projects, going to schools and taking schools into the center and observing how much the residential retreat helps in the blood qualities and chemicals and currency. Everything is positive. And now we are in a survey to introduce mindfulness into the schools, but 20% of the school population is not Buddhist. So we have to understand mindfulness secular part and mindfulness for the transcendental part. And if it is a religious or Buddhist, it is not fair enough by the 20%. And when you are going to introduce only the secular part, this question happened, we are misrepresenting Buddha and we are unbecoming. So therefore, as a monk, I am in an awkward situation. I am, for the moment, working with the lay supporters, and this is the issue we are now really discussing. And when I was in Canberra, there were 2 articles telling practicing mindfulness without moral responsibilities and without observing morality. And it's unanimously they say it is not done. When you have to practice mindfulness, you must be with the 8 precepts or 5 precepts or whatever may be. But anyway, when you go through the suttas, there may be sometimes mindfulness leading to the precepts, and the precepts leading to the mindfulness. They are reciprocal, and they are, it is not a must to have the precepts, and later you can do. So these are the issues we are now discussing. When and where it is going to the younger generation, are we to take this under the label of Buddhism, or consider this as mindfulness as a secular? And I am a person, usually it is okay with the secular. And then when I am discussing with Bhikkhu Bodhi, I am going to take this issue also. I got a film from America called Free the Mind, that is about how the mindfulness meditation or simple mindfulness practice or bringing the attention to your body relief for two kinds of people. One thing is war veteran, they are about to commit suicide. In America, per day, 26 war veterans are committing, or about 1,000 per month. So it's a hell of a loss. So therefore, they have introduced mindfulness, and they have shown about 40% improvement. Other thing about the autism, and there are very little changes for one person. And Richard Davidson, and he is a regular practitioner, and he is the main key person. He introduced Theravada tradition also, but in the experiment you see the general exercises, yoga, breathing, and they proved even for these extreme cases, you can make use mindfulness. Then Bhikkhu Bodhi is writing, he says, this appear like all good, beautiful, positive. But how the government is going to use it, they will encourage younger generation. You can go to the war and you can kill people. Ultimately you will come up to the committing level. But don't worry, mindfulness is there. We have the answer. So this much it is using. Mindfulness becomes the panacea for all the kind of thing. Under such circumstances, should we push, irrespective of the morality or irrespective of the ism? So it's a present day question for our generation. So I have no fixed idea. But anyway, this is frequently a rising question. So me as a person, I started at age 26. I was not a moral person. Even now I am not. So, but still, mindfulness is little shaping, and therefore I would say, don't make it hard and fast rules. I mean, basic qualifications to become mindful, there's no such. But we can't keep all the doors open also. There should have a certain compendium of rules. So therefore, according to the cultural situation and kind of thing, you have to assimilate your own rules and regulation and introduce mindfulness as a, good thing. Always mindfulness is going to give good results. The Buddha, he mentioned, satikvaham bhikkave sabbhatikang vadami. Or monks, you have to expect mindfulness under any circumstances. It can be applicable to any situation. But the thing is the definition what you are going to give to the mindfulness. And for my understanding, it is evolving. When you start with a very rough idea, more and more you practice, the very definition itself is evolving. Within the 37 factors of enlightenment, mindful appear 8 times. It is evolving 8 times. So therefore, starting mindfulness, that usually we consider as the Satipatthana. So that is the what we use it. So is it worthwhile to use it in a secular way? And His Holiness Dalai Lama very efficiently using it now. And he is not representing Vipassana in this very life kind of presentation, but he make it a world or applicable to the whole humankind. So therefore we are not the pioneers. We are going to take it up. And under the traditional outlook, we have to face this question. And so we will do it and a lifelong experiment, but there is no theoretical frame for that. We are working with it. So if some others going to view their views, it will be very, very helpful. Now we are in a forum discussing and presenting difficulties and pros and cons on that. So it is just a question, but there is no set answer for that.
There's quite an extensive amount of resources invested by universities in the States in the development of compassion and mindfulness. That's probably no news to anybody. But particularly there are two programs. The Standard Compassion Training Program, which is available on the net, and also the Mindful Self-Compassion website, mindfulselfcompassion.org, which has got a lot of meditation practices associated with developing mindfulness, blended with loving kindness. And the end culmination of those particular practices from Christopher Grimmer looks very suspiciously like the standard meditation that the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago, but he takes it in steps to just introduce people who've got no clue about any of this sort of stuff through into the point where they can actually practice meditation. It's free, it's on the net.
Yeah, that about 1 month before, the UK declared this as a mindful nation. All-party conference, everyone accepted in the parliament, and they have done 23 years of experiment along the education department, health department, criminal investigation, and some other. And they say you can introduce into the mainstream. And American government declared if anyone conducting research on mindfulness, the central government is going to fund it. Because they found no side effects and no after effects. There's a special paper, they are checking again and again the side effects of mindfulness or after effects of mindfulness. Still there are no. So therefore, we have to go, but of course, the Thero other circles, they know when and where you can keep the religious outlook, the faith, the precepts will be the two companions walking together with mindfulness. And if it is so, but my experience is you are more in the comfort zone than without faith and without precepts. But even then with time, one day, that particular person will understand the faith is not on the blind faith or unfounded faith, the faith on what you are doing and what your own mistakes, and the precepts means the humanity. There's nothing superstitious. Humanity. So that is how it happens. So therefore, our generation has to face this question as well as assimilate the answer for that.
May I also make some comments?
Yeah.
I'd just like to say that at Nolamara, Dhammaloka, a lot of people come there just for the mindfulness training, and there is a very moving ceremony on the Vesak Day, which Ajahn Brahm started probably 10 years ago. That is the new Buddhists, inducting new Buddhists and giving them the 5 precepts. Lucky, who is the assistant secretary, coordinates that program. It's a very moving ceremony. I think probably those people out of maybe 100, maybe 10 people become Buddhists, come into the mainstream of Buddhism. They start with just the mindfulness. And of course, maybe 80, 90 just fall off on the way, but at least 10 people. I think once, perhaps Lucky can give the numbers, maybe last year or previous year, about 51 people, 10 people in person, and all over online, they became...
Majority of them are from USA and places like South America, Brazil, Italy. People take precepts and take formal teachings as their practice.
So that this is taken to the religion or taken to the Buddhist, but a secular mindfulness and the religious or transcendental mindfulness may be slightly different from this issue. And John Kabat-Zinn, after giving a very, very vivid interpretation or introduction or definition of mindfulness, he gave very remarkable the very remarkable features. He says, mindfulness is not under anyone's authority. No one can prevent someone's mindfulness. If you wish to be mindful, under any circumstance you can do, the neighbors can't control it. And no basic qualifications necessary. Any person can start. And then giving after so much of good features, he asked His Holiness Dalai Lama, is mindfulness Buddhist? No, His Holiness Dalai Lama told, no, it is humanistic. So Buddha is the only person recognize it. So we may give the due respect. But it is not limited. It is not necessary to become Buddhist. But the thing is, so-called bloody fool Buddhists not practicing. That is the most ironic thing. The 70% or 80% in Sri Lanka, 78% or something like that, they are Buddhist. But if you go and ask what is mindfulness, they will ask, what? Who told you about mindfulness? Mindfulness is not necessary to be a Buddhist, and that is the way. So therefore, you have to understand the labels, you have to understand the nomenclature, and just compassion, just loving kindness, and mindfulness is very good way. Of course, the loving kindness and compassion is more to the samatha. Mindfulness can be samatha or vipassana, whatever it may be. But mindfulness is answering all the questions in the world. So, but you have to introduce it in a very strategical way, not to make use for political agendas, not for any bad agendas, to keep it pure as much as possible. So, I have no any clear difference whether you must be a Buddhist clergy or monk, or you can be a lay person. For the Sri Lankan model, we found the lay people are much qualified than monastics. They are not bound with that sect and this sect. So, Pandita Sayadaw, he says that the mindfulness has gone to the West and it is catching and it is coming to the mainstream. But to establish monks in the West, how many generations you have to fight? It's a different issue. But our aim is not to establish a Sangha, but to introduce mindfulness. So therefore, we have so much of tools now. And I heard that New Zealand also wanted to introduce it into the curriculum. And Melbourne, I found as institutes, whenever children undergoing that tension and kind of thing, they give it. And Germany also talking about. So we have to try and see.
I can also share in a minute someone very close to me and at their own expense without any pay or anything. This is at a Montessori class. I think maybe 4-year-olds. They are all parents were Christians, but through a friend she was asked to come and teach meditation. And she went and did, I think, 1 hour. She said she couldn't do 1 hour because they are so small, half an hour. I think over 4 weeks. She said results were very encouraging. Maybe half the class was nodding, but the rest was very encouraging. And
so if you have that kind of experience or strategic people, please put into the circle. I started a circle known as Mindful Families. When the parents and children all practicing, I started a forum and we have a flyer now. And about 50 odd number of families now there. And within that we are going to spread it. I had 2 fun camps for children in Florida. About 4 days I was there with the maximum 13 children and least was 6. And we did, they practice of course hiking, swimming and all the kind of thing. A little bit of sitting and a little bit of walking meditation, and they are catching very fast. So therefore it is better to introduce them in the early as possible and give a clear definition and how to put into practice. And then we have to observe how much the precepts or the religious frame is relevant to that, and open-minded people must go into that. But whenever it is progressing, you have to introduce the religious part or the spiritual part.
I suppose this person, I can say this is my daughter, Bhante, and she teaches at the Ajahn Brahm's request meditation at Mulamara as a volunteer. And so she's a primary school teacher, so she had the advantage.
These are the people, volunteering people, they have first-hand experience, and we have to get together.
Bhante, there's one thing that I wanted to say about what you're saying about mindfulness, because there is some research that came out in 2005 by a person by the name of Barbara Fredrickson, who established a landmark response, which is the opposite of the stress response, the flight and fight response, which everybody in the room here would have heard about. And what she found was that the practice of loving-kindness meditation in particular, mindfulness and loving-kindness meditation, established what is called the opposite of the stress response. It is called the broaden and build response. And this broaden and build response is not an emergency response. You don't get a shot of adrenaline. It is just a slow build where the attention focus, the way you pay attention to your environment, starts to become very broad and rather narrow focused on emergency. And there is a disposition to be predisposed towards connecting to other human beings and animals on the planet, as opposed to seeing them as a threat. This is a landmark experience in physiology that's been documented as a product of meditation, and it really is the antidote. Really is the antidote to modern stress, or it's the self-soothing equivalent. And there are things that happen in the body and the heart and all that sort of stuff, but it's called the broaden and build. So it is organic, and it inclines people towards not wanting to kill each other, but to be friends with each other, and it is biological, and it is evoked by these practices that we've talked about.
So it is a kind of a contagious. When you are living in such a society, without verbal communication, you develop the good vibrations. So that is what necessary. It is a kind of a family atmosphere or inmate atmosphere. So someone has to start somewhere, and then it will be spreading, because it's such a demand present day with the misunderstanding and sectarianism and wars and kind of thing. So we have, I think, came to the world with this mission.
The last question, Bhante. What is your view on meditation and mind-related sicknesses like Alzheimer? Thank you.
I have no much of experience, but some consider this is because of not it is a behavioral or food and kind of thing. But if you have practiced before falling into disease, so if you have the way of the livelihood, there may be prevention rather than cure. You can prevent it by holistic living, that is Samma Ajiva. That means not exploiting others, not exploiting the environment, and the frugal kind of living, not much luxury, may give a chance to not to fall into. But otherwise autism, this kind of thing, still a big problems, and there is no, so far there is no tangible results. If at all available, it is only for the prevention, not as a cure.